Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Alicia Atkinson, and I am a customer success specialist here at Let's Go Learn. I wanted to start with a couple of housekeeping points, just so you know how the webinar is going to go. First of all, you'll see your control panel. It probably is most likely on the right-hand side. That's where you can go ahead and ask questions in the question section. So if you have any questions during the webinar, specific to what's being said, you can ask them right away. But we will also be having a question session at the very end. So if you have questions you'd like to ask during that question time, go ahead and fill out that questions section in your control panel. Now, if you don't want the control panel showing and you want it to hide it so you can see the actual presentation, it's not blocking anything that we're saying or showing you, then go ahead and use the orange arrow that is on the top. That will go ahead and slide over the control panel so it's hidden. If you then want to open it up for the question section, you can use that orange arrow again and it'll open it back up. For the most part, I think that's the main housekeeping bits that I want to go over. Like I said, if you have any questions, please fill those out as we go, or you're welcome to save them for the end. So let's get started. Welcome. Today we are hosting a webinar, Driving a Successful Secondary Math Program. And it will be presented by our special guest, Dr. Robert Jagalski, who is the Senior Director of Student Safety, Wellness, and Engagement at Downey Unified School District. He was also formerly the principal at Sussman. And Dr. Anita Aurora, who is currently the Vice Principal at Sussman Middle School. And then a little later on, we will hear from our CEO, Richard. So first, I'm going to introduce Dr. Jagalski. So,
hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Robert Jagalski, and I proudly serve here in Downey. And I've been in education a number of years, started as a senior instructional aide years ago, then a teacher, coordinator, went through the ranks, coach, administrator at the high school, middle school level, with a chance to be a director, and then serve as a principal at Sussman Middle School, where I was able to collaborate with Dr. Anita Aurora. And essentially it was considered, it was a tough school, low performing, lots of low socioeconomic families, and we were able to put some things in place that hopefully we'll share with you that maybe you could adapt for your situation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Anita Aurora. Call me Anita. Yeah, just a pleasure to be the Vice Principal at Sussman Middle School. We have been through a fun road together, and basically our focus on creating access and opportunities for our students to be successful and filling those gaps and needs. And I know we're going to go further and deeper into it as we start talking about the program. So I'm excited to let you guys know what we did and answer any questions that you may have.
Wonderful, thank you. And also just to let everyone know, we are recording this session, so you will have the opportunity to view the recording and share it with your colleagues. All right, Richard, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Richard Capone. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Let's Go Learn. And I'm real excited today because Dr. J and Dr. Aurora are amazing administrators. They're so engaged and motivating to their schools. So I really wanted you all to hear this story because, I think you'll learn quite a bit from what they've done. And so again, I'm happy to be here today. And later on near the end, I'll give a little bit of overview about some of our systems.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna hop right into a little bit about Downey. So from the bird's eye view, Robert, could you let us know about Downey USD and specifically about Sussman Middle School?
Sure. Depending on where you're at, hopefully you can see if this relates to you and you can take what you can to help your situation. But Downey Unified is the city of Downey, and the district is about 13 miles southeast of downtown LA, if that gives you a general idea of where we're at. We're considered to be in southeast LA County, and if depending on what you see in the news, sometimes people think it's a war zone, this, that. We've got wonderful schools, great facilities, great kids, and in general, we have about 88% of our families are Hispanic, and essentially, Sussman Middle School, so Downey Unified has 13 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, 2 comprehensive high schools of nearly 4,000 each, and 1 continuation. Our middle schools range from 1,200 to 1,400 students in grades 6 through 8. And like I said before, we do have a lot of diverse needs. EL, we have special ed, and at Sussman, we had about 1,200 to 1,250 students across the 3 grade levels.
All right, thank you. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the culture at Sussman, and what made Sussman special.
So what we decided to do is incorporate everything. This is our school. I know there's people and administrators that say my school, my teachers. We use the word our a lot. We talk about Team Sussman. We talk about how school should be fun. When we don't have discipline assemblies. We had expectation assemblies. This is where we say, kids, this is what we expect of you. We want you to be successful. School should be fun. Learning should be fun, and that you're here with your friends. There should be things going on. And we created an atmosphere, and if you could see in the pictures, we had our web crew, which is our 8th graders, to help acclimate our 6th graders to become successful as they transition from 5th grade. But we talked regularly and met with our ASB class. We actually had a class at the middle school. We were the only middle school that had the ASB class for our leadership kids. And then we're lucky to have, and if you have this at your district, really use this. We used SMS TV. Our announcements were done daily, live, and we would use our messaging there. And I would go on, and myself and Anita together separately would go on at least once, twice a week on the announcements to share the message of work hard, have fun, make a difference. We all take care of each other. It was a team effort as opposed to this is our school, follow the rules and do what we say. With that in mind, we also tied anything we did academically, our instructional focus, our ASB kids and SMS TV kids help spread that message. We tied you'll be hearing about our challenges that Dr. Aurora, Anita, she helped create and really get the kids on board to find out what prizes and things that would get them to log in more with Math Edge. And all that worked together so that it's not separate. Everything wasn't in silos. We tried to create a friendly, student-friendly, but organized way that the kids can really have fun as opposed to sit in rows, be quiet, and follow the rules. We all take care of each other. We're all in this together.
Yeah, so a really big part of developing our programs started with building culture, building relationships, creating a family, letting the kids know that we're in it together and we're building trust. The kids talk to us. They worked with us. We engaged with them in activities across the board. And so that really helped us get them on board, even with the academic support and filling those gaps in areas where kids sometimes struggle and shy away from. It was more about, no, we're here to help you and believe in yourself because we believe in you. And so really that culture piece was huge. And
the growth mindset, if you haven't done it or started it or your administrators haven't, we used the growth mindset poster where we used kids to develop and identify language to create our growth mindset posters. We built one. You can look on the internet and pull one off, but we built one using language and visuals that completely were brought to Sussman and used in every classroom based on what we did together as a team. Where the kids helped create the posters where better today than yesterday, better next year than we are this year, and that idea of improvement. And it becomes a message so that when you start talking about things like Math Edge and using it to get better, teaching kids to identify where they're at and then have a goal on state testing. We had sheets that tied to the mentality of let's get better and move on.
So on that topic, let's talk about where they were and where they went through these last couple of years. So can you give us a little bit about when you started looking to really make improvements Where were the students?
So when several years back, we started looking at ways to, because we knew we had a lot of struggling students, and we said, well, we have had data that was collected, but it almost became dust collectors on the shelf. So we said, well, how can we incorporate this more regularly, daily, throughout the week, during the day? Can we have it after school? Can we figure out ways to get kids online? And we looked at data. And if you take a look back in 2017 at the different grade levels, for example, proficient or above was only 26% of our students. Now, mind you, 10, 15 minutes away, we know there are school districts that say, oh, kids want to go to your school because, you know, we're a lot less or in single digits, what have you. But we said we've got to get better and take a look at ways to improve. So if you take a look left to right, I mean, sixth grade went up in a couple of years by focusing on utilizing this math edge as well as lessons, first best instruction. We actually have PLCs, but this allowed us to start looking at data as a school and identifying ways to get better and figuring out what you need. The number one thing that we heard from teachers over and over again was, I can't teach the skills that they're missing, but this does help us.
Yeah, and it was really about just in 2017, as you can see, identifying where the concerns were, where are the gaps, and realizing that we needed to do something that can not only identify the problems, but address the problems. And so we really went in and looked at Let's Go Learn, what they offered, and their assessment piece. And Alicia, I'm going to throw you a shout out here really quickly. And Richard were so amazing at getting us started and really leading us through the process and telling us what Let's Go Learn can offer. So what attracted us was the in-depth diagnostic. It is lengthy, but it is an in-depth diagnostic that really truly addresses the gaps that the students have. And so we were really able to identify where are those gaps, what do students need, and then it was all about us getting creative, Robert and I, putting our heads together with our teachers as we talk about Team Sussman on how we can provide students the opportunities to get access to the lessons that are individually targeted to students based on the results of that diagnostic. And that was phenomenal.
And one of the things we have here is it's hard to have our kids stay after school. It's really tough to keep kids after school. We have parents that might work 1 or 2 jobs to try to move to Downey, to try to be here, and some of our kids have to go home to help out with babysitting, different things, different challenges. So we had to try to figure out a way, and we're going to share one of the ways we did it during the school day, to have during the school intervention beyond just even the classroom setting in math specifically.
Yeah, and just getting those double-digit growths, I mean, over the last 2 years, going up 10%, 11%, 9% in 8th grade. I mean, that was just encouragement on its own. And of course, it's an attestament to our teachers, their professional learning communities, and the growth, but also an intervention program that was able to target the gaps where the teachers were not able to.
And just so you know, the teachers that were there were the same teachers. So it wasn't that we brought new teachers in or anything like that. Go ahead, Elisa.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, you know, how did you get the teachers to buy in, and then what did you do to create the time to make this happen?
So we kind of started looking at ways, figuring that, all right, these kids don't necessarily stay after school. We've had some after school interventions. The numbers were low. It was really frustrating because we had the money to even pay teachers to stay. It was how did we get the kids to stay? So what we figured out is in 6th grade in California, 6th graders still consider elementary, only need a certain number of PE minutes, and then 7th and 8th as well. But what we looked at was saying in terms of proficient, beyond exceeding versus proficient versus nearly met versus not meeting at all the standards or on the test, we identified the 2s, the nearly met, and we said, all right, what can we do during the school day? We had extra time in PE, so we said, let's buy out people's preps, not just math teachers, anybody's, to help the kids that are in the 2 nearly met range for proficiency, to then bring those kids in during their PE time once a week, so they still met the PE minutes, but to get service and help to specifically focusing on math. And this is Dr. Anita's. She was the point person and led this movement.
So so really, when bringing this to our math teachers, the concern was, how do we fit this into our classroom time? We can do centers once in a while, we can do rotations, but really the kids need more access, and how can we do this? And so to get creative, like Robert described, is we looked at instructional minutes and ed code. And so when we found that opportunity, the first thing we had to do was we sat down with the math teachers and our PE teachers. And we said, here's the win here. PE teachers, your numbers tend to be high at times, so this gives you some time to have small group instruction. Math teachers, we can pay you for your prep 1 day a week to actually fully focus on the intervention, the gaps. You can do your small centers, and you can have students on Let's Go Learn, on Edge, doing their work and addressing those needs. And so our math teachers and our PE teachers partnered up. We got on board. We had a couple of meetings. We revisited what was going on. We had to create and look at like attendance and making sure that the logistics were, it was definitely a good amount of work in the sense of like making sure the logistics of what schools are required is being handled. Attendance was probably one of the bigger ones, and we'll get to challenges a little bit later, but our teachers started seeing some differences in the classrooms, and that got them even more and more excited. And as you can see with this quote from one of our math teachers, when I'm teaching a lesson, sometimes students have seen the lesson on Math Edge, and as I'm teaching it, they'll tell me, I've already learned this. They have a sense of confidence because it's not their first time seeing it, and they've got some scaffolding already built in. And the reason why this teacher said that is not only does Let's Go Learn give students the lessons to address the gaps that the diagnostic has identified, the teachers are also able to actually assign lessons that can front load students about lessons that they are about to present. And the best thing with Let's Go Learn is that it is accessible anywhere. So kids were able to get online as long as they had some form of device. They went to a Starbucks, they had a phone, they had some sort of device that got them on the internet. They could log in and they could do these lessons. So for teachers, not only was it filling the gaps, it was front-loading information that allowed them to go deeper during their class time.
And then in terms of PE, just so that you know, our PE classes were about 55 to 60 students. So when we said, hey, we'll pull anywhere from 15 to 20 students once a week, and they would adjust to teach skills related to a sport or whatever, they were all for it.
Yeah.
So
what about also the weekend contest? That's something you guys did too to get more time on task. Can you tell us how that came about?
Talk about that with the student buy-in. How did you get the students to buy into the program?
So if you take a look at this picture, this is actually in a math class. This is one that we actually got tables. It was a recent thing to kind of do things in a different way. But we have devices, and we were able to get devices for every single student. We had a 2-to-1 model, and we were able to then move in carts as well to have 1-to-1 model in some of our intervention classes so that they could have, when they needed to have time to work on math and what have you. But math challenges, whenever we had a break, an extended weekend, winter break, spring break, extended weekend, things like that, there were contests, and the students, ASB would help with public service announcement commercials. Hey everybody, and Dr. Aurora created these ways that you could easily track, and we worked with Alicia to figure out ways to track students. And by grade level, we could identify how many lessons were done that weekend, how many by grade level, and then the top 2 or 3 winners would get prizes on air and what have you, and it really pumped it up to keep kids going. And then other kids would get smaller prizes, but the big prizes would definitely get people interested more than just saying, hey, work on your math.
And the kids were so excited. I mean, you incentivize anyone. And honestly, this year, with another initiative we're doing with PBIS, we incentivize our teachers to positive incentives work for anyone is my point. And so to just give these kids even basic like portable chargers, we're gonna do a leaderboard, we're doing a challenge, who's winning this week, and it became a little competition, recognition. We would tweet them out, we would put it in our emails home to our families, our counselors would reach out and do celebrations. It was all about celebrating the students. And for some of the kiddos, some of our ASB kiddos had our phone numbers. It was great and hilarious when on Saturdays I would get a text from our ASB president, I'm trying to do my Let's Go Learn lessons. I've completed 8. I need more assigned. Can you email my teacher and tell her to do it now? And I was like, oh my goodness, they're serious about this. This is great. So it really created created quite the
Fun.
buzz. And this initiative, not only through the challenges, but also within our periods where they were coming from PE into math once a week, it really provided students the opportunities to see how they could enjoy this process and learn. And I think kids started building their confidence in knowing the content and feeling better about going into a math class. Some of the kids would say, oh, especially some of our 8th graders, they would say, hey, this is kind of a little, like the songs are a little childish,
Corny
a little corny. And then they would come back and say, oh my gosh, it's stuck in my head. But guess what? During the test, it helped me. I remembered it and I learned. And that's what it's all about. And so we really saw all of our kids thriving on these lessons and these opportunities, and just the system that we had built in to create that access and that fun portion of Let's Go Learn.
And there were even math teachers who incorporated growth, the growth mindset, and focusing on growth. So they would chart, here's where I'm at. And sometimes they would do it on a chart for the class where they'd put where everyone in the class is and then mark growth with different colors. So it became part of that growth mindset, and we're all in this to get better. So they would know where their grade level was or where their gaps were. And it was kind of neat to see how different teachers incorporated it. But the kids, to get them excited and buy-in, like I said, we regularly talk about school should be fun, learning should be fun. You're here with your friends, kids your age. You don't get along with somebody, find somebody else. But this all tied together with the support from Let's Go Learn, Alicia, Richard. It worked for our kind of system, and we hope it would work for you.
And the other opportunities that we took, and maybe many of your schools do Saturday schools for attendance recovery.
That's right.
So we would get our attendance recovery program actually grew tenfold because kids were given an opportunity to get on devices and actually go on Let's Go Learn, and they didn't have them at home. They didn't have internet at home, so they got access and got time for 4 hours, 8 to 12 o'clock. They got attendance recovery, and they got access to the competitions and opportunities to earn these fun prizes, but more importantly, to learn where to close those gaps and to keep learning. So that was another way of giving students opportunities and access to both internet devices and Let's Go Learn itself. So that was really.
Can you also add about the goal setting? Because I know you all started student goal setting where at the beginning of the year they'd set goals. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that too, because I think that was an important piece.
So our CAS scores, our state scores, we actually have our kids. We had one year where we do handouts, but then we incorporated it. For those of you whose kids use student planners, binder reminders, whatever you call them, we actually slid that in there where kids will identify their score from the past, what they scored, and what they want to shoot for throughout the year. But Anita, you can also talk about, because we also focus that on grades as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we had our students basically reflect at like the longitudinal data. So take a look at like how did you do last year, the year before that, and what will it take for you guys to improve on the score, and what are your action steps? So where are you? How many points are you away from the next band? So if you are a nearly met and you want to get to met, what will it take to get there? And then the action steps. So a lot of the kids would write down, well, we need to get on Let's Go Learn. And then a lot of the kids would also write down is we need to go see our teachers during lunch or after school, or attend Saturday school so we can get access to devices so we can do Let's Go Learn. And you could clearly see with their responses on those reflection goal setting pieces that they valued access to Let's Go Learn. And so it gave us encouragement to continue not only seeing the growth in our scores, but also the fact that the kids were in, the teachers had bought in, everybody was in. And so it just gave us more encouragement to keep going.
How did the parents react to this kind of involvement?
This was the best thing. This was the best because parents would come into some of our meetings and we would meet with them. And, oh, my kid keeps saying I have no homework. I was like, oh, yes, they do. They have access to Let's Go Learn. They always have homework. And we don't call it homework. We call it access to opportunities and fun. But mom and dad, you just get them online. You take them to a Starbucks, a local library. If you don't have internet at home, we provided those opportunities. And parents were so thankful that they knew what to tell their kid. So we empowered them with the language, and we would send these flyers home and the information home on how to log in, how to get access. so that they could make sure their kids were on board and actually working. And our teachers were really good at communicating with the families as well. So our teachers would let their families know, like, if they're done with their homework and they've got nothing else to do, and that's what this quote says, log on to Let's Go Learn. Log on anywhere there's internet, and you can check in and see your progress, see how many badges you've earned, and what else you can work on to keep continuing your growth.
Wonderful, thank you. So now my question, so everything sounds great, but of course there's going to be some challenges in implementing any new program. What are a couple of things that you found you really needed to make sure that this was successful, and challenges that may have come up in the process?
Well, right from the beginning, if you got to make sure your site administrators create a vision that focuses everyone on the same team, just to have, so that you can keep people focused and motivated on that growth, on that mindset. Because the message with growth mindset really helped us. School should be fun, learning should be fun. That was something that we all needed to do. Our growth, our vision for the school we created as a team included student participation, parent input, as well as teacher input, obviously. But we focused on preparing students for their high school journey so they could be successful. That was actually in there because it's a journey that makes sure that they are college and career ready, globally competitive, and citizens of strong character. So that was a strong message.
Yeah, so our leadership and our vision was definitely like the biggest thing. Is we had to be together in it and make sure that with the challenges we try to address them and have fun with it. Specifically, the challenge would be adding new kids into the sections and attendance, because these were rosters that I hand created for every single prep period for the math teacher that had taken on this initiative. And so anytime a kid either went in or a teacher felt they were good now, they could go out, I had to physically change it from both the math teacher roster and the PE teacher roster so that the attendance on a daily basis was accurate. So in that sense, that was a challenge, because as a vice principal, and I'm sure many of you have been in this role before, there's a lot more going on during the school day. And so just getting that time in. But I also know, as instructional leaders, this was a huge priority for us. So we knew that we're going to make the time and we're going to make this happen. So I think that was like one of our bigger challenges. Other things were like our teachers becoming experts on how to use the platform. It did not happen overnight. It took, I would say, the first year of a good amount of coaching. And again, our customer success specialist, Alicia, was there all the time. Anytime we needed her, we would call her. She would show up. We would set our appointments. She was extremely responsive on emails to answer any questions. Their tech department is extremely responsive, very quick turnaround to make any adjustments as needed. So that challenge was not really a challenge, because we were able to get support so quickly with that. And Robert.
And the on-site PD, for example, we have here, we're lucky to have here in Downey, all 4 middle schools have an early release Wednesday where our PLCs meet. So when there was a question or issue that was across the board or something we wanted to do as a department, they would either train or provide us with information or come out, and Alicia would meet with our math PLCs right there on that Wednesday, which was perfect. So if you have that, you can take advantage of that. And the other thing is the incentivizing and celebrating students and staff on the weekend, winter break, and spring break challenges, celebrated teachers in terms of usage by class, friendly competitions between teachers and challenges. All that makes it fun and incorporates into growth and improvement while keeping it light, and instead of, oh, I got to just go do these lessons. And it makes it fun.
And the challenge there as administrators is you have to now intentionally also apply and dedicate some of your resources. So in this sense, it was financially allowing to use some of our LCFF funds or our per pupil funds to say student incentives or staff incentives are important because we want to keep this going because we're seeing an impact. So in that sense, it was talking to our school site council, making sure everyone is on board, and that we are okay in funding this program. And honestly, in the beginning, it was a little bit of a challenge, but as soon as the data started rolling in, it was no longer a challenge. Everybody was like, oh, it's working. There's no reason not to keep going. That's a no-brainer. Let's go. So those are the challenges.
Yes, so speaking of the results, as we showed that right at the beginning, but I do want to just reiterate, that they did make, that data is supporting what you did. I love that you were able to, bring students in and out of the intervention. I think that's huge. The students didn't feel stuck. When they started to make improvements, then they were able to graduate out. So I just want to reiterate how, where Sussman is now, in the last year, from this past year that they did make those improvements, and really you saw a lot of success.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I literally, with that last screen there, it went from 26% to the 36% that last screen showed in 6th grade, and 7th grade went from 22.9% to 33%. That was a nice jump. And then 8th grade was a big one for us. We had some teachers struggling with PLCs, what have you. They went from 19 to 28%. So that was huge. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is good to know, it's the same teachers. So they were making a big impact on the culture and on the the actual instruction. So yeah, so what next steps, has this affected your other areas of focus in the school to allow you to grow in other areas as well?
I mean, honestly, Alicia, with like anything, once you see a winner, you keep going down that same path. There's no need to change, but we do keep tweaking as we go. I am literally just working on getting our spring break challenge up and running. And this year, talking about dedicating resources, we are taking that jump, and we are buying Disneyland tickets for our greatest users and kids who show the greatest growth. And so it's all about getting the kids more and more excited and giving them opportunities. And the reason why I say Disneyland tickets and I bring that up is also because our population and our students don't have access to that, and they don't easily get those opportunities. And so to give them the opportunities like this is even more exciting and more thrilling.
One of the greatest things that we saw too that was nice, we tied all this together to the school culture, but at some point we actually reached, back in 2018, I think it was, we had the #1 attendance rate in the district. For a middle school to lead a school district, K through 12 school district in attendance is pretty rare, almost unheard of. But that showed that the kids bought into this and our whole system of getting better and using Math Edge to improve in math and all these other things we're doing across the board. So it was a mindset that helped us with just package it. It fit right into what we were doing.
Hey, just so you guys know too, because you guys are doing so many contests, that actually influenced us as a company, and we've been working with our other customers to do lots of contests over winter break and spring break. So you guys have been a motivation to us as well, and so thank you for that, Dr. J and Dr. Aurora.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So we're gonna have Richard share a little bit about the technology that allowed this to happen, and then we'll come back for questions to Dr. J and Dr. Aurora. So Richard, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what we do as a company.
Sure, you can go ahead and advance the slide. So yeah, I'm only going to talk about for less than 5 minutes, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So if you have a question for Dr. J and Dr. Aurora, go ahead and enter it into the panel where it says questions. There's a little toggle, and you can type in your question, and we'll feed those to them once I'm done. But yeah, essentially the way we do this is there are these 5 areas that we focus on as a company for our solutions. Really, it starts, of course, with the diagnostic assessment, and Dr. Aurora mentioned that. Our assessments in math break math into 44 subtests and finds the student's zone of proximal development in each. And that's really key, because the irony is most math assessments are really summative. They only have a score at the strand level, like numbers and operations or geometry. But the reality is you need data that's very granular and it's actionable. So Our data is very actionable. Their teachers were able to understand it. They're in grade level scores that are vertically aligned. And so you can see exactly what does it mean. And I think initially Sussman relied on the data to drive personalized learning and EDGE, but also, as you can hear, the teachers started using the data as well in their classrooms, but that does take time. And so again, diagnostic assessment, actionable data, personalized instruction, and then of course, progress monitoring is this ability to see how are my students doing at any given moment. And that's an area that we're really beefing up even more, progress monitoring too. So today, we're launching real-time progress monitoring, but that's the discussion for another day. The other piece, of course, in the middle here is PD. So being able to train principals, site leaders at a district, as well as teachers is really a big key. And people, we have a whole department of people like Alicia who are just amazing, and they're always there ready to roll up the sleeves and work with our customers. So we're real excited about that. As far as secondary, I do want to mention something. Secondary math reform is very, very different, right? Because there's a lot of different factors. So as you guys are all listening to this, I know some of your backgrounds may be a little different, but there's other factors in here. Today, you heard some of the stuff that Sussman's done, but there's other things you can do too, including front loading. But I think it's important to understand the dynamics of secondary in general. In secondary, it's a little harder to do flexible grouping. It's harder because the teachers aren't used to working in small groups. So that's something that takes time, but just be aware that we have a lot of different customers who implemented secondary math reform in different ways. And so, we're happy to talk to you about that and help you figure out how to do it for yourselves. As far as EDGE, I want to real quickly just sort of describe why is EDGE so effective, right? There's three reasons. First, it's targeting the zone of proximal development. This is key, right? Lots of instruction out there, a lot of great stuff. But if you don't give someone the right lesson at the right time, it won't work. All right, so that's the first piece. And ADAM is a 44 subtest. So we break math into 44 subtests. Each subtest is the scope and sequence of skills and concepts. We find out exactly where the student's at. And it's interesting, for middle school, a lot of the students were getting first, second, and third grade lessons. Actually, you can go back, Alicia. Which is really interesting because they have gaps. Students develop gaps from second and third grade, and a lot of those never get filled. Okay, the other piece here, number two, is that, as you heard, our lessons were really engaging and used multiple modalities, right? So you have songs, you have animations, you have text, you have graphics. All of this allows students to learn stuff that maybe they had a hard time learning before, and that's really key. Now, the last piece here is retention. We have a badge system which allows students to reinforce what they've learned and go back and do review. And so having these three pieces is really what makes EDGE so effective. All right, as far as the first piece here, ADAM, just real quickly talking about that, I already mentioned it, 44 subtests. But one piece too is students can understand these reports, the graphics adjust based on the student's grade level or age. And then in terms of the reports, they can see exactly, okay, how am I doing in certain subtests? And then it's also understandable knowing, maybe I'm low in fractions, maybe I'm low in numbers or place value. So that's really one of the key pieces as well. And then the other piece about EDGE is just to mention too, is that EDGE has lessons from K to 8, right? And actually, it does actually have Algebra 1 as well. So regardless of the student's ability, it had the right lesson for the right student. And that's really important because I think a lot of programs out there, they say they're personalized, but they're personalized only in the essence that if you're a sixth grader, maybe there's fourth and fifth grade lessons and that's it. But you really need something in this day and age for students who are struggling in math. You need something that does K all the way up through 8. And the next slide, Alicia. So this slide right here just shows you, we didn't touch on this, but this is what the student sees before they log in or when they log in. And so this is their personalized path. So the student will go through and each student gets assigned these lessons. So if somebody's advanced, someone's at risk, they can all sit side by side and have their own personalized path and they do the lessons one at a time. And of course, then they have an opportunity to do a review period. So during a review, they would get their bronze and silver certificates up to gold. And that's important too, because the way our system works is if you do a lesson, you can't do a review for 2 days, because we want to make sure that they really, really understand it, and it's just not something that's stuck in their short-term memory. So we have a whole methodology for this. And then of course, Sussman took advantage of this. They were encouraging students to go for gold. They had, told them to go do review at different points of time. And then they were also even assigning lessons too. So at one level, you get your automated course, but also the teachers were able to assign lessons, maybe because they wanted to scaffold something that's coming up the next week in regular class. All right. And in terms of reporting, I'm not going to jump into this, but we have reports for teachers. So if a teacher wants to know how many hours of instruction do I need to get the student up to grade level, how many lessons do they do this week, lots of teacher reports. And then we also have admin reports. So if they needed Dr. J or Dr. Aurora need to know, what's the performance scan reports for my students, what's the average scores, how well are they doing? We have reports for PLCs. So whether it's teacher or whether it's site level reporting, we have all of that. So that's it in a nutshell. What I want to do is we're going to go into the question and answers, but you see my information there. If you all have questions, you can email me, you can call me, and then also I could connect you to your local educational consultant because we do have people throughout the country. But let's go ahead and move into questions.
All right. So, okay. So the first question asks, says, great webinar at my school. I'm sure at many others, sometimes we struggle with keeping a positive culture or environment when introducing new initiatives. So you guys seem to have really overcome this. Any pro tips? So for Dr. J and Dr. Aurora.
Before we made any announcements, we had an idea of where we wanted to go, and we had met with Richard and Alicia. But if word starts getting out like this is a top-down thing, obviously less buy-in. So that's why we went and literally met with the teachers and coaches, showed the pros and cons, talked about why we wanted to use during the day interventions and our kids and the needs. So we kind of used some of that to plant some seeds and ideas to show how our students don't have access to internet at home. Sometimes people forget, especially if you easily have access. A lot of our population, we started sharing some of the stories of our kids so that they understood more of why we wanted to do stuff during the day and why it made sense. And then some of these other things just came up, lowering the class size for PE at least a couple times a week, and just helping our kids get better, that's our job.
Yeah, and even like talking to math teachers, it was just having open conversations and saying, where are we struggling when we're teaching? Where are we struggling? And a lot of them voiced it's the gaps. They didn't get it from the year. They always pointed to the elementary schools. They didn't do it in elementary. And we're like, okay. So we're hearing that there are gaps that your standards don't address.
And one of the phrases you'll hear is, I don't have time to go back and teach that skill or that gap. That was repeated. So this helped fill that gap.
We heard them and their concerns, and we said, and then we actually asked them, we said, then what are your solutions? How do we address that? How do we fix it? And it was silence. And I said, okay, we've been discussing this possible solution. Are we on board? And we talked about the pros and cons, and we worked as a team. And we said, you know what? If it works, we'll keep going. And if it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board. We're not saying this is we are locked in. But if we see a positive impact, let's do it.
And then they started seeing some successes because of the little things day to day that kids were getting skills and getting a little bit better and stronger in certain things that they end up, coming up with ideas to make it better. And that's how it grew. So. And
this was not only, and I'm sorry if this was already stated, but and repeating this, but it wasn't just our gen ed population. In fact, actually, our special ed population thrived off of this access, and our teachers who really, in both the co-teaching environment, the push-in environment, and just the pull-out environment or the SDC environment, everyone was successful in trying this process, but they all had a voice. They all got to share what their mindset was, and until we got everybody really on board with those conversations, that's how we kind of decided to move forward.
Excellent, thank you. So now, as administrators aren't always in the classroom, so growth isn't always as obvious. And And so sometimes we forget to ask, like, did it work? How were you able to track progress for students?
So we got regular updates and reports when we had challenges. Growth, teachers could monitor on the screen while kids, if they used it during the class. So if you had maybe 10 students, you working with a small group, 10 working on Let's Go Learn, and 10 others doing something else, they could rotate, but they could actually see on the screen what's going on. But the reports, Anita can give you a little more detail.
Yeah, so teachers were obviously able to monitor students' progress and usage, but as admin, we could monitor teacher usage and how many kids were actually getting on board per their assigned teacher. And then we would have those conversations, very gentle conversations of, you know, Mr. So-and-so. It was, can you tell me how you're using Let's Go Learn, and what is the impact? What are you seeing out of it? And sometimes it was oh my gosh, I've been a little busy and I didn't take a look at this and I'm so sorry. And it was like, well, do you think it would help you? And it was always like yeah, I will, because my colleague in my PLC said it was helping her. So it was like, okay, let's get on board. So it was those gentle conversations. It was never a top down,
Gotcha,
I need you to do this now because I am tracking you on data. And yeah, we could have approached it that way, but we felt in this case, because truly it was to benefit the kids, we wanted it to be a team effort and allowing our teachers to see that we're in it together and we're here to support. And a lot of it also came down to, do you need our customer specialist to come out and help you? And sometimes, honestly, the answer was yes, I got stuck. My kids are stuck in these lessons. I don't know how to clear them. I don't know how to move them forward. So we stopped. And sometimes it was kind of like, well, you could have asked and I could have said that, but it was more like, you know what? I know someone who can help you. I'm going to call our customer specialist. We'll get an appointment. She'll be here and she'll get you guys moving.
Great. So just wanted to know if you have any additional advice on how to get over the access obstacles. And then this is also for Richard as to what has Let's Go Learn team seen in other organizations for, you know, helping students access when maybe they don't have internet at home.
Richard, do you want to take it first, or do you want to
Sure.
go?
Yeah, I can start. So as far as what I've seen other schools do is, I see a lot of districts, first of all, partner with Verizon and AT&T because they all have programs to support education. And so I see a lot of districts nowadays have free hotspots. And so they'll have a whole bank of hotspots that they can give to students who don't have access. And so then they have a check-in and check-out system. So maybe some students would check it out for the weekend, or maybe sometimes the longer term. So that's one thing that I think is available. But you guys also sort of mentioned it as well. You know, sometimes it's just going to a Starbucks, right? And so it's really having the students know what kind of options, having the parents know what kind of options are out there. And that really helps with access. But the other piece too is it does work on a smartphone. And the reality is today, most people, regardless of their socioeconomic levels, they do have a smartphone available. And so it's not like the lessons take a huge amount of bandwidth. It's just like almost like streaming audio. And so you do have a lot of people who use smartphones on the weekends to do lessons.
We had parents who'd said, you know what, I sometimes have to take, some of our families didn't have enough for sitters or family nearby or what have you. They said, you know, sometimes I have to take them with me my kids with me on errands and things that take a long time. And I said, but the thing is, I could give them my phone and they could log in and just keep kind of busy. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but when we heard it over and over again, we're like, you know, that's a bonus. We didn't see that coming.
Right, and it was access in multiple ways too. So even though we weren't like the biggest proponent of after school because our kids struggled to be there, there was a group that was able to stay.
Yeah, very
so
few,
we would
but...
open up our labs. We had some teachers who would say, okay, we'll give access to our computers for this certain time. So we tried to get creative wherever we could as far as giving access. And then we dedicated our own resources. It comes back down to the school budget, and we saw value in it. So we did a large chunk of purchasing of technology so our classrooms could have that support, and our district did the same too.
And if you can look at any organization's budget, I don't care, business, school, university, wherever, if you look at their budget, you'll see the priority. And if you took a look at our budget, we made it a point to really put interventions in and get technology for our kids to help them in any way possible to get them ready for the 21st century.
Right. Wonderful. All right, thank you. Here's another question. Richard, you mentioned some other secondary math reform initiatives you've seen. What pattern do you see that's critical for these kind of initiatives?
Sure.
And I think this is going to be our last question.
Yeah, one thing that's sort of interesting is that one of the huge challenges is that math is so rigorous at the middle school level that in order to cover everything you're supposed to cover, there seems to be very little time left over. Now, Dr. J and Dr. Aurora did an amazing job because they built up this culture, right? So everyone, teachers are buying in, the students are getting extra time. But if you don't always have that right away, what we've seen is sometimes schools will do front loading. So maybe they treat this almost as an intervention and they say, okay, the first 3 weeks of school, we have good devices. So we are going to front load this and have everyone do Math Edge for 3 weeks straight. And then the teachers will cycle through and do small group instruction. But that's another way of doing it, because the advantage of doing front loading is, Edge is so effective. Sometimes with 5 to 15 hours of instruction, depending on the student, you can get them up to grade level. And what's really essential in middle school is once they are at grade level, their ability to access the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math is so much more enhanced. Because the reason why we see struggling students in middle school is it's an access issue, right? The other type of access, not internet, but it's access in terms of they're so low that they're lost. And there really is a major inflection point that happens at 6th grade. And so that's why it's really important that interventions have to happen, and you want them to happen as fast as possible. And so that's one thing I see. But we do have another white paper on this too that people can look up on our website that talks about secondary math reform, and that's something you could check out too, or you could always email me. I can send it to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. J and Dr. Aurora, for sharing this with us. And if anybody else has additional questions, of course, please reach out to Richard. And then if you already are with us and want to change up the way that you're doing things, reach out to your customer success specialist. If you want to get started, Richard can get you connected with an educational consultant. All right, thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.